Hey everybody, happy holiday season yet again. So my name's Amanda. This is our third episode of Hashing for the Holidays, a Bitcoin Magazine limited series podcast. It's been an insane year for Bitcoin mining, and I'm excited to have some more very festive, finally, guests and friends on to actually talk about actually building, maintaining, and expanding mining companies. So you all do something a little bit different, right? I want to start out with something more fun for all of you. So in addition to who you are, what your company does, I want to know a holiday tradition that you and your family participate in. So I can start with mine. I've been with my partner for 15 years, and every year he asks, can we have colorful lights on the trees? And every year the answer is no. That's a tradition.
Wait, but why though?
Because I just like the white lights. Like, they just look so clean and uniform that you should know this about me by now.
Aesthetic over everything, with aesthetic.
That's right. Look at this hat.
Well, I have a new tradition. It's our work family, so not my personal family, but this year we did our inaugural Christmas tree lighting. I just posted on Twitter. We lit up an S9 Christmas tree with a genset. So
amazing.
What's more appropriate in a Bitcoin mining discussion?
Nothing. And Steve, you're the CEO of Upstream Data.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Wait,
President, CEO, whatever.
Nice. Wait, can you introduce yourself and tell us one of your stories?
Sure. I'm Whit Gibbs, co-founder and CEO of Compass Mining. And our holiday tradition, we actually yesterday did this. We go into the forest here in Latvia, we chop down our tree, and then I get to carry it half a mile back to the car, and then we bring it home and decorate it. So we did that yesterday with the family. It's a great time. It's always nice to get to have that experience when you just growing up in the States, you go and you pick out your tree, right? But here there aren't tree farms. And in Soviet times in Latvia, you couldn't celebrate Christmas. So it's a really big deal for them to go out into the forest and be a little bit sneaky about it and chop down a tree and then bring it back to the house. So that's still just a big tradition here, it's really cool.
Wow, that's pretty cool. Yeah, I mean, I haven't done the go to a forest and chop down a tree, but I usually pick the biggest tree at the farm, and then Jay tells me that our ceilings are only 9 feet tall and we can't have a 15-foot tall tree, so get you on that. Thanks, Whit. And last but not least, Harry.
I'm a resident Jew, and so this is a Hanukkah tradition. As you can see from my blue holiday sweater. I'm Harry. I'm VP of Strategy with Grid Infrastructure, and my holiday tradition is frying latkes for Hanukkah. But since seed oils are fiat, we get authentic chicken schmaltz. So authentic butcher chicken fat to fry the latkes in, and so that's it makes the house smell like chicken for 6 weeks afterwards, and everything's delicious. And so that's my holiday tradition.
That's amazing. I tried to cook on Thanksgiving and burnt myself pretty bad, so probably never going to do that again. All right, guys, this is great. So it's been an incredible year, like we said. Harry, I'm going to start with you because Grid has had a lot of announcements lately. You've announced, that you have a $500 million loan from blockchain.com. You have a SPAC with a valuation of $3.3 billion, which is all beautiful stuff. That takes a lot of work, right? It's probably been a very long year. Can you tell us about this past year and also how, scaling and thinking about scaling, how you decide that as VP of Strategy at Grid?
Sure. Well, I definitely can't comment on any of the first part of any of that stuff, but that's good because I get to actually talk about the exciting part, which for us is our people. So we entered the year with very few people, and we're coming through the year with a lot more people. So one of the things that I get the most excited about is, as a Bitcoin miner, is that we're not a traditional kind of startup. We're very much a bricks and sticks business. We're go find a rural plot of land next to a substation and go build something from nothing. And so because that's the nature of the mining business, I get so excited that our employees are not traditional startup employees. This isn't their third trip around the merry-go-round. Many of our employees are former active duty members of the armed services. Many of them are welders or construction workers or insurance salesmen, or pick your poison. Mining has provided a career change for a ton of people who are taking a deep expertise somewhere else and bringing that expertise to Bitcoin. And so that's what part of what gets me so excited is building, the type of company that can bring the best out in those people and educate them in what Bitcoin means and what Bitcoin mining means along the way. So getting to grow the team and getting to work with those really special people is huge for me.
That's a really interesting point. And Steve and Whit, I feel like you probably have had to do similar, growth strategies for your companies as they've been growing. How do you identify candidates in the world to work on Bitcoin mining? It is kind of a difficult thing to do.
That's for me, Amanda.
Yeah.
Well, the people we hire, our business is mostly fabrication, really, like building data centers, power plants for those data centers, and now like retail focused data centers. But so, there's really no, the people that apply to our positions, there's absolutely zero background in Bitcoin or anything related required. I do like when people apply and they either on their cover letter or if it's like a DM or an email, however they're getting in touch with us. It's pretty cool when they do have a Bitcoin focused experience, and I always like that. But like our staff there's a lot of mechanics, fabricators, like carpenter types, some IT people, some back end like office admin. We're up to about 40 people. So all those people are pretty much actually the bulk of my company still, I'm going to actually force them onto it, but they still don't really understand Bitcoin or have any. So this year, like in 2022, I have plans to force them into it for their own health.
Naturally, yes. What about for you? This has been the first year of Compass, right? And you've grown so much from a year ago. It's been pretty incredible to watch on the sidelines for me. How do you decide what you need in terms of people, and how do you find them?
Yeah, so our first step is we look at people who have majored in Bitcoin mining from Ivy League institutions. No, I'm just kidding. Like, obviously, look, there's no better experience in Bitcoin than just holding it or mining it or being involved around the space in some way, shape, or form. So most of the talent that we've been fortunate to bring on at Compass comes from people who are on Bitcoin Twitter or have mined with us. I think 50 or 60% of our staff, our team actually started as Compass customers. And that's how we grew our initial, we're at just over 80 people now. We started with 3 this time last year. And I think that, the first 25 or so were Compass customers. And then from there, what we've done is we've leveraged their networks. We've looked at people who, were Bitcoiners. They knew their friends were working at a Bitcoin company and they wanted to get into Bitcoin, and we were their foray. Fortunately for us, most of the talent that we bring on, they have some skill set already that applies to their job, right? If we're looking at sales or tech support or customer service, those are skill sets that can be developed in non-Bitcoin industries. And then we're just able to tie them into what they're doing on the daily at Compass. So it's been a little bit less challenging for us because we're not, as Steve is, in a fabrication business where it requires a certain level of skills like that. But our skills are more generally applicable and can be, fortunately learned in other non-Bitcoin jobs.
Yeah, it's pretty fascinating to think about the amount of jobs that now exist within Bitcoin mining. And this has actually been a theme in the last 2 podcasts too, is it just seems like we are underestimating the amount of talent and amount of people working on mining. And being in it from a couple years ago, it's really incredible to watch it grow. So it's something that I'm also excited about. You know, that's really happy and exciting and holiday cheer, but like, let's talk about some frustration and some like annoying parts about being in the Bitcoin mining industry. So Harry, I'm going to start with you. Can you talk to me about supply chain constraints and how that affects your business?
Yeah, so I think that the reality of the global supply chain situation is not a secret to anyone. You know, everything's getting here later. Everything's more expensive to move over, you know, water, air, or otherwise. You know, I think that we were really fortunate to invest in logistics and you know, having our arms, you know, kind of wrapped around that process. But I think that it's just another opportunity to highlight how much of a bricks and mortar business mining is. That if, you know, it's not about a developer writing another great line of code. It's really about another truck showing up with another transformer, or another truck showing up with, you know, another you know, container, or the commodity price of steel, copper, et cetera. Like these are the types of nuances that are important to keep your arms wrapped around when you think about scaling up any Bitcoin mining business, and managing supply chain and keeping, you know, a tight hand on cost controls is important anywhere, you know, especially when there's so much competition, you know, to bring on hash. So, you know, definitely moving things and buying, you know, the underlying commodities that are feeding, you know, the inside of transformers and switchgear and wires and all that good stuff is top of mind. You know, but the good news is that, you know, there's a lot of great teams that are able to manage those situations, and Bitcoin mining is an exciting and interesting business that's well positioned, you know, to solve a lot of these challenges as well. So, you know, I think that it's not gonna stop being complex or difficult, but I think that it will continue to be solvable. Whether it's solved with expertise, you know, price, or differentiated relationships. I think there's lots of ways to thread the needle.
You think that that's the most frustrating part for you as you're building grid is trying to understand like how to, you know, keep things going both on the building side and also on like the ASIC side, and making sure everything is aligning and showing up on time? Or is there something else that you think is more frustrating?
The most frustrating part? No, the most frustrating part is that, you know, running operating businesses is always challenging, right? There's always complexity and hard work and detail that goes into doing a great job. You know, and you know, continuing to double down on your people and continuing to double down on kind of conviction, you know, in your approach to the space is what you know, what's most important. But I think just you know, I wouldn't call it frustrating, but I think like what's most not obvious about running a Bitcoin mining operation is just that like it's super complex, it's super nuanced. I like to, the way that I like to tell people is, you know, imagine the person in your life who you think has like the hardest, weirdest, most unusual job. Everybody's job is just that hard and unusual and difficult. It just is varying degrees of transparency to you. So, you know, I think about, you know, the people who are, you know, industrial scale farmers, or, you know, artists, or, doing like I watched a video about like plate fabrication for cymbals. It's like the cymbals that get pressed. Like that business is like just as totally complex and nuanced as mining a Bitcoin. And so I think like having just an incredible respect for the hard work that goes into doing any business is the starting point. And then just saying that, you know, while Bitcoin mining is a uniquely Excel modelable business, the actual execution of building something and having it run with a high degree of uptime and certainty, it just takes a ton of work. So surround yourself with people who love it and get in the trenches.
Absolutely. Steve, what is your, you know, biggest frustration? Obviously you work a lot with oil and gas guys that sometimes get Bitcoin, sometimes don't. Like, how do you deal with with building your business in a space where some people might be super interested in Bitcoin and some people might not be?
I'd say actually still our biggest frustration, similar to what you're talking about with Harry, is supply chain. We're getting ahead of that, but I mean, a lot of it has been sort of comes at you comes at you with like getting caught with your pants down in a sense. Like suppliers are, quoting a certain lead time, and then all of a sudden with no notice, it goes from like whatever 6 weeks to 20 weeks. So that's actually compounded. I mean, everyone here, even though we have varying business models, that supply chain would affect us all and every consumer, because whether it's getting facilities online, like in like Whit's area, and I think Harry's area as well, or us just getting materials to build, I've had significant delays on customer orders. So that always sucks, and you try to hold their hand, and everyone starts whining if they don't get it when they think they should. But it sucks, and it's just probably the biggest frustration, although we're finally getting ahead of it, I think, because we have some a significant amount of materials on a very long lead order now. So hopefully we stay ahead of it, but you never really know, because it's just like little things like out of nowhere, like, well, right now the battle is with aluminum extrusions, like for what we build. Last week I found out our filter supplier all of a sudden is coming up short. So it's little things you never know, like never really think too hard about finding redundancy in. And no one's had to find redundancy in for like the better half of a decade or more, because markets have been, efficient, or call it reasonably, if the supply chains have been efficient. So that's been tough. And then our challenge, of course, with oil field, we're always trying to sell to the energy producer, like as opposed to third parties, though we do sell a lot to third parties. So it's always been a challenge getting the energy producer themselves to buy into it, obviously to put out that kind of capital. So I'm still frustrated, say, by the state of the industry that we're in, where supply chain on ASICs is still not that robust. There's still too many, I don't know, like not that easy way to get your hands on ASICs under reasonable payment terms. So a lot of that is annoying, and sometimes I want the bear market to come, because when the computer pricing is lower, our customers are more inclined to make a purchase because the capital cost isn't so crazy. Because again, they're often like an oil and gas company. The 99% of the time, at least, if they're looking at our stuff, they're looking at doing an emissions reduction application. So they don't really need new gen computers. They just want cheap computers that'll have a decent payout. So yeah, the whole ASIC supply chain, where it's at in terms of the industry maturity, can be frustrating.
Yeah, it's very frustrating, especially when you have to like think about the future and like how you are going to make returns, right? It's really difficult to deal with that based on like how it works today. Whit, that takes us to you. So tell us about your biggest frustration from this year.
So if I'm honest, I don't know that anything is frustrating, and let me explain this and unpack this a little bit more. I think that, when we sign up to build a business, you understand that it's just going to be challenges that you have to either overcome or your business goes under, right? Like if everything was easy, then there would be a ton of people that are doing what we're doing. Now, what I will say is what we have learned, and I think that the biggest lesson over the course of this year is to make sure that we're, one, not putting all eggs in one basket, right? There's the South Carolina situation that I think most people have heard about by now with regards to the delays that we faced over one facility that had 23 megawatts allocated to it, basically just, pardon my language, shitting the bed. So we had to then rush to figure out where do we put 23 megawatts of customers' machines in as quick of a time as possible, in a time when the market is pumping and everyone obviously is missing out on that time up and hashing. And what it's taught us is, one, that our customers are the best. Like, we have the best customers in the world. I mean, there are so many people who stuck with it through that entire time, could have taken a refund from day one, but they were so adamant to get up and mining that they stuck it out with us through the entire time to get their machines up and running. And the second thing that we learned is that you have to have redundancy plans, right? No matter what comes from this idea of like the Chinese exodus and limited rack space or whatever, if you bend to that narrative, you're just giving up, right? So we decided not to give up, right? Over the course of the first 6 months of the life of our business, we approved a grand total of 12 facilities. Now, those facilities were already built. Everything was already done. We simply just had to go through our verification process and we could send machines there. In the time from August to now, we have helped to stand up and verify an additional 15 facilities. So we've scaled up a mining operations team to help with these things. We've hired someone who can go out and structurally advise these facilities on how to build or where to order containers or whatever the case may be. And it's made us more resilient as an organization. And then learning from all of this as we go into 2022 now, right? We have already 250 megawatts contracted that it's locked in, right? So any one of our deployments, if they're delayed, we've already got a backup. And in most cases, we've got a backup for the backup. Just in case there are any delays whatsoever, we have that redundancy plan in place. Now, I will say, like day to day, there's certainly challenges that you face, right? There are certainly days through the past 6 months where I'll wake up and I'll check Twitter DMs and I'll want to break my computer in half or, slam my phone on the ground and stomp on it. But people should be mad, right? I would have been mad. Like if your machines aren't up and hashing, which is what you purchased them to be doing, it's got to be frustrating for them. And I think for me, the hardest part is knowing like we're a service focused company, right? We're relationships over business organization. That was tough. That was probably the hardest thing for me over the last 6 months, just seeing how upset people were, knowing that our entire brand, our entire company is built on customer service and frankly, serving the retail market. So that was certainly, I think if there was anything that was like, that was it for me over the last 6 months.
I think that mostly like mining companies face that, like pure play mining companies face that, but behind the scenes, right? So like everyone has had, but like everyone here, I'm sure has had like delays, whether it's because of, ASICs being delayed or, the supply chain or, building delays, like that exists. It's just that it never existed at the retail level really before. And so I think that's kind of where the shift happened, right? Like when, I heard there were delays, I was like, yeah, it's a Bitcoin mining site. But I think that's the shift that, has happened. And that goes into like the emergence of retail miners, which we've seen over the past year, right? So both Compass and Upstream are working within that, right? Especially the at-home mining space. So where have you guys, like, what are you seeing in that part of the industry?
I'll pass this to Steve. I gotta be honest, like with the black box and everything that he and the team are doing, they're crushing it.
Well, we haven't delivered any yet, so I don't know if we're crushing it yet. We definitely have a ton of interest on it, which is cool. I mean, which I never really realized that the market was sort of ripe for that interest level yet. Because it's sort of the black box being just a product that lets you enclose your miners in a safe way. So like it's a fire retarding, call it, I won't say fireproof, but pretty much fireproof enclosure. So even if you're having it indoors, it sort of encloses the miner in a safe place, and then it's soundproof and weatherproof. But I mean, I don't know. I like when I basically polled Twitter one day and asked like, do you want me to build you something like that? And it was my best poll ever. And that's where it came from. Actually, it's funny because I had that mining enclosure concept in my head for must have been 2 years. But I never really thought about the retail mining market until the feedback we started getting. So it's been interesting. I don't know. Like I think for sure the retail mining market, call it the home mining market, is very frothy right now. Like it's gonna settle down at some point. You know, in a bear market, it'll settle down again, and it won't be as sexy. But right now, it's very sexy. You just see every day more and more people posting, online and in forums about their own home setups, and I think it's a great way to do it, like, and a great way to get into Bitcoin, especially when you look at the hardware cycles and where they've been and where they're going. It's probably a pretty good time to get into it. If it's not today, then in the near term, because well, the hardware you buy, as long as you protect it, like you don't let it exposed to something that will destroy it, like the elements, but that hardware should last up to a decade. Like there's no reason why not. S9s have lasted over 6 years now, certainly over 5 years publicly available. So when you look at those hardware cycles, like this hardware is getting it's becoming a better and better investment because the ASIC itself holds its value for longer. So I'm excited to see the home market where it's at, where everyone's excited about it, and hopefully we're just hoping we can provide something useful to help that market.
So why are people mining Bitcoin at home? Because it's probably not always profitable. So what are the reasons you're hearing why people are choosing to go through this route?
Well, quickly from my opinion, it's fun. I mean, I started my business effectively learning what mining was all about in my garage. So if you have any kind of aspiration to like do mining at a bigger scale, it makes complete sense to start at home. You are getting KYC free Bitcoin, which different people hold different value on. There's definitely a subset of the market that really likes that. I personally think it's the right way to go. But a lot of people do have high power costs. So if you look at it from a purely economic point of view, like your capital costs and then your profit margin and your payout, it's not always going to be the best option. Like hosting would be cheaper and a better return, or just buying Bitcoin in a lot of cases. So I mean, it's to each their own, but I see it. I actually just bought 2 miners. I haven't been mining at home actually for quite a while, for about a couple of years. Once I started my business, I just put that ASIC I think I had in one of our rigs and haven't been mining at home ever since. But I just bought 2 ASICs to start mining at home again, because I just think it's going to be a good investment long term. I think I can, I think in whatever I end up paying that right now, like 10 grand for an ASIC, I think I can sell it for more than that in the next bull run in a few years, like no problem.
To add a little bit of color on there, I think the other aspect is just this belief in Bitcoin now that maybe in the past was present, but just not to as many people. So now all that's happening is where before you may have had a subset of people who were interested in mining. Now you still have a subset, but the subset is just bigger by numbers because there are more people in Bitcoin. And a lot of the people who are purchasing their mining equipment from us for home mining, KYC free Bitcoin is a part of it, but really just participation and securing Bitcoin's blockchain is a big part of it as well. They see it as similar to running a node, right? If you're going to run a node or stack sats with Fold or whatever the case may be, then you should also be mining Bitcoin and have an ASIC on the network. And I think Steve, over the past few weeks, he's basically summed it up in all of the suites. Just plug in an ASIC, right? The solution to just about everything is plugging in more ASICs. And there is a big belief and buy-in in that. And I think that's true for all retail mining participants that are getting involved.
The other thing I would say too is and I assume that everyone buying ASICs and mining at home all subscribe to the idea that Bitcoin price is going to increase, right? So even if you lose some cash now, some dirty fiat, as Steve would call it, right?
Yes.
And you hold on to your Bitcoin over time, that is actually profitable. So, that's one of the reasons why I'm going to buy a black box, so that I can plug it in and have access to Bitcoin mining at my own house.
Retrospectively, mining has basically never been unprofitable for people. Like whether the only question is what would it have been your best investment? In a lot of cases, the answer is no. A lot of cases, if you're just purely speculating on with your money and you don't care about non-KYC or anything else, in a lot of cases for a lot of people, especially if you look at the supply chain of power right now, I think like I keep seeing charts from like European power and other places like skyrocketing. So if you're in a place like that and you're paying crazy power levels, well, mining's not going to be that from a purely speculative investment standpoint, not that great, but everyone in history of mining, like over time, has done well. So I don't think anyone who does it at home isn't going to do well. And by committing to like buying an ASIC, you're sort of pot committed to keep running it in your dollar cost averaging every day until you unplug that thing. And hopefully people don't have to unplug it for the better part of a decade.
Are we ready for a bear market as miners? Is that what we want, Harry?
No, I don't want it. Do you want it, Harry? I hope not. Well, Harry just got a few billion. He doesn't care anymore.
Yeah, he's like, let's get some capitulated hardware.
What do you care, right, Harry?
I have no comments on the future prospects. What I would say is that like everything is good for Bitcoin, right? China ban, hash rate drops in half, recovers in 9 months. Good for Bitcoin. Bitcoin price crashes at the beginning of COVID. Good for Bitcoin, right? Recovered immensely. We bore the toughest financial burden first, and then recovered aggressively first. I say we Bitcoiners. So I think that the mining industry broadly is kind of in a place where not everybody has been through the kind of cycle that those who joined the industry earlier have been through. Compass is young, but Whit, I love you. You're not. And so I know I know you've been through it, right? You've got the battle scars. Amanda and Steve, you've been here since before I have. That's for sure. And so the folks on this call are, we've seen it, right? So I think that, we don't remember what it's like to go through, that type of value erosion, as operators, right? So I think there's a lot of folks who are in the industry today who weren't here, certainly not in the 17-18 transition, and probably not at size in the Q1 2020, price breakdown. So I think that, there's a lot of, I use the Game of Thrones metaphor, which is the summer soldiers, right? They've only been soldiers during the summer season. They've only seen the fair weather and gentle shores. So, will there be a ton of challenge for some of the folks in the industry when we go through some adverse events? Maybe. I think what's working against them is they don't have experience. What's working for them is that they're really well capitalized. Where does that net?
Everything you think about too, Harry, is just the growth of what we're going to see with hash rate over the next year, right? So because we have the rise of public mining companies, we can almost like model out exactly how much hash rate is coming online over the next year or so, right? Which allows us to have insight as to where we all as miners stand against that. So curious, like, do we think that there will be the same players in mining next year at this time that exist today?
I'll say no. Like if everyone wants to say no, but you take deep, meaningful breaths, Harry. It's okay. I understand. But no, I mean, it's impossible. Everything is cyclical.
Yep.
So there are going to be businesses that fall by the wayside, just like there have been in the past. That's just what happens. If there is a big market correction and, people's customer bases drop off 30 to 50%, then yes, there will be people that cannot sustain, right, for one reason or another. And to Harry's point about companies that are well capitalized, I think companies that are well capitalized are in a better position. However, I still think that the mining industry, and I'll speak for the mining services industry for a second, their major struggle has always been like capturing market share, right? So even if they have a nice treasury, are they going to be able to deploy that effectively to gain market share while other people are falling by the wayside? Because really, if you are well capitalized, you do kind of want a bear market, because this is your opportunity to really distance yourself from any future competition, to build your moat even bigger, and to continue to build in preparation for the next bull market. And if I'm honest, I think that the three of us on this call, right, with Steve, Harry, and I, our businesses were really built during the bear market, right? It's just now we are in a bull market, so everything that was done behind the scenes during the bear market is now, now being lauded. But there has to be a cleansing.
My first deployment was at the peak of the 2017 bull cycle. So I had a few glorious days of mining at extremely high profitability, but then it was all downturn from there.
Yeah, it's fun to go through the cycles though. And also like Harry was saying with like the Chinese shut off, like it seemed like it would be negative, but yet we all were more profitable as miners, right? So it's kind of like the most perfect competition that has ever existed in the world, is Bitcoin mining. And as long as you can figure out how to be the most competitive, you're in a good place. I know Twitter has come up a few times on this conversation, whether it's through, hiring people or polls, et cetera. One thing that's really started to grind my gears on Twitter is that everyone is now a Bitcoin mining expert, right? Or like a mining advisor suddenly has a mining company, right? And it's great that we're growing as an industry, but as like a normal person, how do you sift through some of that?
That's tough. And there's a lot of like scammers now. I think I've seen scammers impersonating Whit. I've seen a bunch impersonating me. I bet you Harry's got a few floating around, and you definitely do, Amanda.
Oh yeah,
impersonators. It's a dangerous minefield out there for a newbie. We had a customer recently, a local guy, like local to our shop, so that like very, very local to us. And he came in for a shop tour, wanted some miners. We quoted him, and anyway, he didn't like our price. He found a better price on the internet, and so I asked their sales guy. I was like, "Oh, that's strange. He found a better price. Our pricing's not that bad." So I asked him, and we found out he was buying through a website that was clearly a scam, and he was just about to pull the trigger. And we just said, "Listen, man, you're probably getting scammed at that price. Like, no one's selling him that cheap." Anyway, he did more research and eventually just came back to us. But yeah, it's not easy. That's why, I think there's a huge when it comes to retail, like new miners and or even like industrial, but like new entities looking to mine and get into it. The companies, all three, everyone up here, including yourself, Amanda, we have a reputation, right? We have a real business. We've been around. I think everyone knows that if they're going to do business with any of us up here, whether they like our price or not, they're not going to get screwed. So that alone is pretty important, like incredibly important, is just having a bit of a real business and a real business brand and reputation to back, the product and service. So definitely challenging for these newcomers.
I think it also shines us. Steve, totally agree. And I'll tip my hat to the ignorance that I don't know anything about how to deal with customers. So I'll leave it to my friends, the experts. But 100%, if you're going to send money to anyone, triple check, do more research, find someone to vouch, ask for a reference, all of the pain in the ass stuff that comes with that, that being a squeaky wheel customer, force them to give you a reference. The easy, in hiring, in buying, in anything, if you make somebody give you a reference to vouch for them, you're going to find out pretty quickly, what's going on. So that's my quick advice, but more, I think there's part of what was in Amanda's question was number one, how do you interact with the industry? and how do you take part in it, but also like how do you learn about it? Like there's an information thing happening too, where there's a lot of like, hey, I showed up in mining and I'm here to fix it kind of perspectives that are out there floating around. And, and I think that, it shines the light, and we're doing this with Bitcoin Magazine. Like, I think that just having a sort of like, not to make it about Harvard, but like a Harvard Business School, like case study on a Bitcoin mining company style report, Galaxy, maybe you could do that, or maybe Bitcoin Magazine could do that. But like, can we walk through the guts of this business? Can we go through the financial statements? Can we go through, the process? Like as a retail person, like imagine Warren Buffett, opinions aside, imagine Warren Buffett woke up and the year was like 1962, and he went to, the Edgar database, which was actually just a library at the time, and popped open, somebody's 10Q or whatever filing he could get his hands on, and he wanted to read it. Like, what is the version of that filing that would have impressed him in 1962 when he was reading every single word of something like that? How can we as an industry, provide that level of sort of education to the highly curious, highly inquisitive? Like, I've already declared education bankruptcy on Bitcoin Twitter in this area. So I don't think that's where it's gonna happen. But one of those things, like a year ago versus today, I think the quality of education resources, the quality of platforms that are out there today, whether it's written, podcast, video, whatever, like is just way higher. I had the pleasure of being at the Nashville Bitcoin meetup last week. And like, it was just ridiculously high quality. Everybody, nobody mentioned price, and everybody was building something. So, I think that there's a hungry population for high quality learning. I don't know what the right way for that learning to happen is. I'm just a dumb Bitcoin miner, but somebody really smart out there is going to do a great job putting together, an incredible resource, and it's going to do the whole industry, a great service.
Because one thing on that, Harry, education should be free. Like, anyone that is teaching people about things related to Bitcoin and Bitcoin mining, it should be a free resource where people can learn the reality of like this world. So agree with what you're saying. Don't want to inspire someone to then create a course that allows us to like pay like $3,000 to learn about Bitcoin.
No. I'm thinking of just like an awesome research like thing that gets,
Yeah, totally.
If only you could change the world with a short little white paper that drops anonymously and free.
Well, but I mean, you've got so many people that are getting into the space now that they're eager for any kind of information on Bitcoin or Bitcoin mining. And, there are so many resources now, right? Almost every company, mining or otherwise, has somebody that's producing content for them or as a part of their team that produces it on the side. And it's all beneficial because iron sharpens iron, right? Like, through this quantity of information that's coming out, the quality will rise to the top, and everyone who's producing content will get better and better. We're seeing people who would never have left their traditional roles in these like major mainstream media companies that are now making a shift to get into mining fully. And, I think it was a year and a half ago where like we had people who would write for Compass for 6 months and be like, I don't know if I can cover mining anymore, because it was just the same thing over and over again. Right. And like a little bit of a spoiler here, but we just hired someone to lead videography from Compass who's leaving BBC to come. Right. Because he's like, I'm sick of covering the same drivel negatively around the world. I want to come and talk about the positivity of the impact that mining is going to have on the world as we move forward. So, I mean, like, we're going to continue to see higher quality content producers get into the space. And that's going to be a win for everybody.
I challenge this group to think of another area of the world. So I think that Bitcoiners are the most optimistic people on the planet. And I think Bitcoin miners are the most optimistic Bitcoiners, right? We see the intersection in between bits and atoms and the magic that happens there. And the good that it can do for people's lives and communities and families. Like, we are so proximate to the good that Bitcoin can create. Like, of course, everybody wants to get interested in this. So let's pay it forward, and put together awesome ways to learn and onboard to this, in the spirit of Bitcoin, free, open source, opt in, across the board.
Yo, my fellow Bitcoin lovers, have I got something specifically curated for you. The Deep Dive is Bitcoin Magazine's premium markets intelligence newsletter. This isn't some pay group selling buy and sell signals. No, this is a premium Bitcoin analysis led by Dylan LeClaire and his team of analysts. They break down in an easily digestible way what is happening on chain, in the derivatives markets, and in the greater macro backdrop context for Bitcoin. This newsletter turns volatility into a joke. So hit up members.bitcoinmagazine.com and use promo code podcast for 30% off the deep dive. That's members.bitcoinmagazine.com, promo code podcast for 30% off. Divorce your paid group and learn why Bitcoin is the ultimate asset by Dylan and his team. My fellow plebs, the Bitcoin conference is back. Bitcoin 2022, April 6th through the 9th, is the ultimate pilgrimage for the Bitcoin ecosystem. The Bitcoin conference is the biggest event in all of Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies. We're leveling up and making this bigger and better than ever. I'm talking straight to the moon with the 4-day-long festival in the heart of Miami at the Miami Beach Convention Center. This has something for everyone. Whether you're a high-powered Bitcoin entrepreneur, a core developer, or a Bitcoin newbie, Bitcoin 2022 is the ultimate place for you to be with your people and celebrate and learn about the Bitcoin culture. So make sure to go to b.tc/conference to lock in your official tickets and use promo code Satoshi for 10% off. You want more off? Pay in Bitcoin and you'll receive $100 off general admission and $1,000 off Whale Pass. Those are stackable. So go to b.tc/conference and attend the best conference in Bitcoin history.
So last question for you guys. We're entering into another year, right? Another year of all of us working on Bitcoin mining. Is there a specific trend or focus that you think we'll see next year?
For going to new all-time highs, hopefully. No, I don't know. That's a good question. I mean, I think if you see the bull market continue, you will see the mining fever just get bigger. Like it's just going to get bigger and bigger. Hoping that there's no major bear market looming yet. It would be nice to have one more year, fun times. And then we can get into the pull your bootstraps up tough times. I can't say I have. I would expect to see more products, and whether it's software or hardware, sort of like what we do. But like I'm aware of a few small hardware projects in the mining space for retail and for like small scale mining. But I could see there being a lot more advancement on the software side even. I'd be interested in seeing that for sure.
Awesome.
My trend for this coming year is that I think that there were two stories in 2021 that carried the year. One was ESG, and the other was
what word was that? What? Did you say the ESG?
Yeah, I
tried to sneak it in there.
I think the ESG
right at the end. Hey?
Yeah. I think
that
the two dominant narratives this year were miners are really big companies. Like I think that other than exchanges, miners are the biggest segment of the market that's out there. And so I think this was the year that the year of the bigger miner, and the year of the ESG narrative. I think next year the ESG narrative is going to flip, and I think that the change is going to be how can communities recruit large scale miners, because the net economic benefit that large scale miners represent are going to start to be recognized. I think the ESG narrative is going to be largely put
Harry, lost you on audio there for a second. I don't know if Steve figured out a way to mute you because you're talking.
The man cutting Harry off.
Yeah.
I want to deliver that.
What are you thinking for next year?
I think that next year what we see, and I know that, Adam on Steve's team has talked about this as well, but I think we're really going to see people who would have otherwise deployed capital into real estate investments start moving those investment dollars over to Bitcoin mining. The idea of machines returning on the investment in 12 months is certainly more attractive than any other real estate investment than anyone is ever going to be able to make, in the modern day. But I think that we're going to really see serious dollars that would otherwise go into rental properties or that second home make its way into Bitcoin mining, because these ASICs, which are, an asset that's correlated to the price of Bitcoin, they're going to continue to appreciate in value. And people are seeing this move towards mining as a way to generate passive income while still having an asset that appreciates in price. So I really see that, coming to pass in 2022 in a very major way. And I think that there will be reports written on the shift in real estate investment from retail investors going into the mining industry.
Awesome. Harry, I know you got cut off there because of Bluetooth. Was there a final point you wanted to make, or are you good?
No, I think the final point is just that Bitcoin miners will become an incredibly sought after, valuable piece of the electrical grid in the areas that they choose to locate. And I think that value is going to get recognized, over the course of next year.
Awesome. Agree with you on that. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining me on episode 3 of Hashing for the Holidays. And thank you for being so festive. You definitely win the most festive outfit if this was a challenge. So
you got to light the hat up though. You got to let's go.
This burns more electricity than Bitcoin mining. Here we go.
Thanks for having us, Amanda.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Thanks, everyone. Merry Christmas.